meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carrie Willigan. I'm the Assistant Dean of Career Services in the Business School, and I'd like to welcome over participants today. This is ProfessionalQuest Retail, and we have an amazing panel for you. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful faculty moderator and our wonderful panelists. Students, if you have any questions, please send them to me in the chat, and I will make sure our moderator gets those questions. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our faculty moderator. Thank you all for attending.
Well, thank you, Carrie. And let me echo the thanks again to the audience, as well, most importantly, to our panelists who have made the time to discuss the different opportunities for careers in retail and the skills needed. My name is Gautam Vadkepat. I'm an associate professor of marketing at George Mason University and the director for its Center for Retail Transformation. This panel is about addressing your questions and allowing you to ask questions of our panel with regards to what are the opportunities for you for careers in retail. So without further ado, let's meet the amazing panelists that we have assembled, and maybe we'll go in alphabetical order. Emma, would you like to kick us off, a brief introduction?
Yes, my name is Emma Irwin. I'm currently an e-commerce specialist at Flywheel Digital, which is a Baltimore-based company. We help brands and manufacturers achieve success on large omni-channel retailers, essentially. I'm only about 1 year out of college, so I'm very excited to be here representing the very new in their career kind of portion of people.
Excellent, welcome. Jenna.
Hi, my name is Jenna, Jenna Rosell. I am Consumer Market Insights Senior Analyst at Petco. So I support both the supplies for dog and cat and the companion animal teams, which includes everything that's not a dog and cat, as far as consumer insights go, giving them bottom-up feedback from the consumer base.
Welcome. Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Nicholas. I am a technology analyst at the Estee Lauder Companies. So I work on our digital technology and innovation team, all things kind of e-commerce and online related. And I'm also a 2015 graduate from George Mason School of Business.
Thank you, Katie. Actually, we have 3 George Mason graduates, Jenna, Katie, and Luke. I didn't have the pleasure of teaching you, Katie, but Jenna and I've taught you, Jenna, before. Luke.
My turn. Hey, everybody. I'm Luke Plickitus. I'm a Mason alum. I work for a company called Custom Ink. We're a pretty big custom t-shirt manufacturer for groups and organizations. I work in the technology side of the business as a product manager.
Welcome, Luke. And last but not the least, Rich, the most experienced of our panelists.
I'm feeling old. I will say a little bit of a shout out to both Estee Lauder and Petco, as we carry both of them. But my name is Rich Honeyball. I am the head of merchandising and marketing for the Navy Exchange Service Command, which is actually a command under the United States Navy. And we have retail, food services, hospitality, and so I will be able to speak to the credit that I take on behalf of the teams that actually do that work.
Thank you. All right, so without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Audience, feel free to put questions into the chat box as you see them arrive. But let's perhaps walk them through your career trajectory, how you got to pick this career field. And maybe this time around, we'll start again with the junior most panelist and work the way to the senior most. Emma, why don't you share your perspective?
For sure. So 2020, I graduated from the University of Minnesota's retail merchandising program. And how I ended up there was I had no idea what I wanted to do in college. And I really was like, man, I like shopping. I like thinking about how you make purchasing decisions, found retail merchandising, and that's how I ended up in that program. I was incredibly fortunate to find the host of a podcast called Omni Talk, run by former Target execs, which is how Gautam found me. And so that taught me all about omni-channel retail and talking and having my face plastered all over social media. But the time came that I needed a real kind of I needed to take a step in my career, and it was very, very difficult. This was the beginning of COVID. It took me a year to get an interview at some company, and Flywheel Digital happened to reach out, say they were hiring for an e-commerce specialist. I didn't know what that was, and so I did the interview process, figured that e-commerce is something that's not going to slow down and it's continuously growing. And that's really how I decided to take the job, mostly because it was the only one I was offered. But hey, I'm very happy to be here and I've learned so much.
Shout out for the honesty too. Actually, both Jenna and Katie, you're both 2015 graduates, if I remember correctly. So maybe Katie, and then we'll go to Jenna.
Sure. Yeah, so like many of you probably will be doing soon, I sent out probably 1,000 different applications. My main goal was to get a job around graduation 2015 and kind of work in the DC area, which there aren't that many retail jobs in DC. So it wasn't a main target of mine, although I had done an internship with Sherwin-Williams. So I kind of knew a little bit about retail, but knew I didn't really want to work on the shop floor. So got lucky when I got a message on LinkedIn. So update your profiles because they really do help. But I got a message from a Retail Industry Leaders Association, which is located in DC, and they work with a lot of the major retailers. Target, Walmart, Nexcom is one. Petco's a member as well. So I started there at their front desk and then moved into an EA role for the president. And that's where I kind of got lucky. Which is, I think, how many jobs come about, is you just are in the right place at the right time. They were starting a retail innovation center, and I had extra bandwidth, so volunteered to help with the foundational research for that. Ended up leading that center for a couple of years, and then kind of found my way, big interest in startups and kind of that venture capital world. And so as in my current role as tech analyst, my main role is to kind of find startups, do that vetting process for Estee Lauder and find the right partners. So it was a unique position that really kind of took into account retail and startups. And so that's kind of where I found my niche.
Excellent. Jenna, how did you make it to retail?
As Gautam knows, my story is a little bit rocky and chaotic. I went to James Madison University. I didn't like it. I spent a couple semesters at Nova, ended up at Mason, did about 5 or 6 internships and ended up more confused than ever, like farther away from what I wanted to do. And then I met Gautam, and he told me to read a book called Freakonomics, which got me into market research. And like Katie did, I realized there was no private companies kind of in the DC area. So I had to make a really brave move. And I applied to about 40 companies in the San Diego area. And I took a vacation out here, and I got one interview. I went to the interview with a bathing suit under my clothing because I was going paddleboarding afterwards. I ended up getting the job and having to move to California like a week later. But I worked for that advertising research firm for about 3 years. Ended up not being the right fit anymore. And just so happened that Petco was putting together an insights team, and the leader of the insights team was really interested in having somebody who had a background in advertising. So kind of a happy accident where I am, but really excited to be here. And I've really loved working for them, getting to do own brand stuff, positioning, innovation, all sorts of things. So it's really branched out from where I was in advertising research, and now I'm kind of like a full service insights person.
Yeah, and true story about Jenna, if you don't mind me sharing, is that, when she took my classes, she did not like to do research or analytics. And now look at her, like she's living that life and enjoying that life of being a research person. So
Gautam can tell you that even if you hate math, you can make it. And I'm proof of that.
No, it's about perseverance. Well, look, it's on to you. What's your career trajectory like?
Yeah, so like I said before, I graduated from Mason with an art degree, actually. And if I'm being honest, I'm at best an average artist. So I tried for the first few years to make that into a career. I worked for an indie video game company for 2 or 3 years. And it worked, it did well, but it turned into somewhat of a nomadic lifestyle, and I didn't want to leave the DC area. So it felt like a good time to change. I started at Custom Ink about 10 years ago in a sales role. So I was inbound customer support, talking with customers, helping them get through problems and whatnot. But I knew that, from my experience at that game company, that I really liked the creative process, project teams, that kind of stuff. And that was the direction that I wanted to head. So I started trying to gear myself towards that internally at Custom Ink. And 2 or 3 years later, I got my first shot to move over to the technology side of the business. While there, I've done a couple things, but probably where I really grew the most was in a project management role for a couple years. And then I ended up heading up that team. And through that, I got a lot of exposure to a lot of the roadmap initiatives that we execute at Custom Ink, got a lot more familiar with the technology that we use and the ways that we work to give customers the solutions they need. And what I realized was, like, I was working with all these product managers. They're asking me for tons of advice constantly because I had so much organizational knowledge. And I was like, I'm doing everything but making the decisions. And so then I started finally trying to ease my way into a product management role. And that's what I've been doing for the last few years. And I've been liking it a lot.
Excellent. Thank you. Rich, saving the best for the last again.
Well, the oldest, and kudos to each of you as to how you've gone through your career. I had not intended to go into retail. I actually was going to be a lawyer and a career officer in the Navy. That didn't work out, and I was fortunate enough in that I kind of fumbled around for the first 10 years of my career and ended up finding that I have a certain aptitude and love of this, of retail. I've worked in progressive positions from buying to brand development, product development and design, brand management, and went from specialty retail to department store, eventually to the wholesale side, ran my own consulting company working with startups because I wanted to fall in love with the business again, and then decided to make a transition when purpose really became more important to me. And about 6 years ago, moved to where I am now. I live in Virginia Beach, work with the Navy Exchange Service Command, excuse me, and get to do all the wonderful things in retail, for merchandising and marketing and web. The difference is that everything that we do is for the benefit of the military, consumer, retirees and their families. So it's a cool way to do what I love in more of a purpose-driven organization.
Excellent. Actually, hopefully now you get the audience gets the reason why we put together this group. You have differences in experiences, different career opportunities as well. And maybe we can go around and reverse order now, Rich. Maybe talk about, what excites you the most about careers in retail. What's the thing that keeps you going back to retail?
I think it is I heard somebody say they wanted to work in retail, but not necessarily in the front line. And a friend of Gotham's of mine, Ron Thurston, wrote about the accidental retailer. For me, it's the opportunity to serve a customer, regardless of who that customer is. Today, a member of the U.S. Navy or military. But you can do so in a variety of different ways, whether you're left brain or right brain, whether you're more design oriented or analytics oriented, whether it's merchandising or marketing or developing brands or buying brands, or is it HR or legal or contract negotiation? It's almost a microcosm of everything that's out in the outside industry, probably 80% of it. But with that common goal of serving whoever your customer happens to serve. So if you go through your career the right way, and I think today's a perfect opportunity, it isn't a single trajectory. It's the ability to move to different areas and experiment a little bit and find what you're passionate about. And as your passion wanes, find another thing that you're passionate about and continue to move.
That's awesome. Anyone else? Luke, your thoughts?
Yeah, Rich, tough act to follow, man. That was a really good answer. So I resonate with everything that he just said. The cool thing about retail for me, and I think you kind of said this at the end there, Rich, but there's just like an endless amount of history in retail to consume, to learn about, to study. And then there's still even more an endless amount of stuff to discover. So one of the really fun parts about my job is like going out there and looking at customer behavior and figuring out what kind of problems they've got that can be solved. And sometimes that's stuff that's been done 100 times and you just got to figure out how to make that mold fit for yourself. And sometimes it's things that are completely novel and new, and then that can be even more exciting. So there's just tons of opportunity. And I definitely resonate with the idea that like it touches so many different types of skills and potential roles and levels of responsibility. There's a ton of opportunity.
Anyone else wants to add anything? Katie, Jenna?
I'll say that I actually worked in retail when I was a teenager. I worked in Wegmans for about 7 years between high school and college. And I used to, I saw a lot of things change in that time. So like the building out of the organic section of products, like the people buying those like frozen Ezekiel breads or, all the different milks coming out. I kind of saw that development happen in real time, the kind of like food trends and how they changed, just the way people buy things or the way people consume. And some products are just wacky. You kind of wonder how they ended up there. Or I remember there was this like set of Crayola toothpaste that came in 3 colors, like red, blue, and yellow. And I was like, what a nightmare. Like, why would somebody make that? But kind of being on the other side of it and seeing how companies say, okay, how do we make something that's exciting and disruptive and pulls in new customers rather than just, refreshing the old customers. And it's like Luke said, there's endless questions to answer. There's endless things to dive into. And that's a lot of what I do with customer insights is I do a lot of creative problem solving is like, why does nobody's dog raincoat fit? And these are like real problems and you actually get to solve them and see them solved in real life. So I think that's really cool is, I'll be out sometimes and I'll see a brand that I've worked on personally and somebody's just using it. And that's so cool to me.
Yeah, I think for me, having been more on kind of the organizational side and less directly with consumers, what is interesting to me is that retail gets a really bad rep for being very slow to change, and that's just a product of being publicly accountable. But to me, retail is actually changing a lot and doing so much in terms of technology and ecom to meet customers where they are and where they're purchasing. For example, Vans World and kind of the Nike land in Roblox, you have Balenciaga in Fortnite. As you can see for me, metaverse is a big part of what we're looking at and what's kind of happening in retail. But I think it's just really cool to see retail trying new things and really meeting customers where they are. And they do get to do a lot of exciting projects. And with startups too that are going into retail, it's very cool to be able to kind of talk to a startup early on and then see their funding journey and see what retailers they're partnering with. And then if you kind of know what they're doing, you have an inside scoop and you get to see it live on a website where your average customer would have no idea what went into bringing that one feature to a website. So I think it's just a really unique experience because you touch so many people, no matter which part of the organization you sit in.
Emma.
I can top it off and talk about, for anyone out there listening, if you end up in a strictly e-commerce position like I did, things change so fast. A million things change a day. It's absolutely incredible. You can't know everything. You never will. And we work my job is specifically looking at Amazon, but we are experts on Amazon. Amazon changes things on the consumer facing site every 5 seconds. We have to understand, present that to our clients, what it means to them, and nothing is ever stagnant. And then the last thing that I really love about retail is that you are a consumer too. Even if you work in retail, you go to the store and you subconsciously make decisions. And to me, that's so fascinating to get to both be a consumer and then someone who kind of studies what consumers do and how they interact with retail spaces, whether it be physical or digital.
Well said, well put. All right, so this session is for, of juniors, freshmen, sophomores, trying to figure out their careers and so forth, right? So what skills should they have? What kind of classes should they take to help develop themselves in retail and in your specific domains, if you will? At this point, I'm not going to, anyone who wants to unmute and go on first, go first.
Just say, since we were actually talking about this, I think before the session went live, I know Luke was an art major, but for me being a marketing major, I found some of my favorite classes to be on the creative side and outside of my major. And I think kind of those Photoshop skills and different kind of digital technologies are going to be really important, especially if you want to work in kind of a marketing role within a company. It's always helpful to have a little foundational knowledge of some of those things, in addition to all of your classic kind of business courses. So I do think for me, that was something really special. And then something that I found after school is design thinking. And I think that is such a unique way to position problems and really figure out kind of a people-based solution. And I don't know if they teach it yet at George Mason, but I would encourage all of you to at least kind of look it up and learn about it, because that kind of changed the way that I think about every problem. And I think it's so helpful and beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, and we do have their classes in it. Other classes use it as a framework as well. So that's good. Excellent. Any other source, digital and visual skills? Anything else?
Gautam will be very happy to hear me say this, but I really thought his analytics and new product introduction class was very helpful as far as learning the basics. One of my first jobs was communicating between the data guy who wrote the report, who was very, very smart, but like wasn't great at explaining things, to the salesperson who was going to present it to these big companies like General Mills and Target and things like that. So I had to make sure that the translation between them was perfect. It was framed perfectly. And kind of having experienced a little bit of the nitty gritty of that data helped me to understand it in a way that I wasn't just parroting, I did understand what was happening. So I thought that that was really helpful. And to reiterate what Katie said, my boss is a food science major. So, you know, focusing on those skills that really come naturally to you. If you're a people person, networking is your game. If you like visual arts, getting into like branding or graphic design, things like that, there's always ways to pivot that back over to business and to get into a corporate environment, but really just fine tuning and honing what you're good at is going to make you an expert in your field. And that's going to be hard for anybody to compete with.
I think that's all really good advice, Jenna. I'd say for sure, whatever you're strong in is a good thing to focus in. So early in my career, through my 20s, I actually worked in the service industry as a bartender for most of my early career in tech. And while like that is not, I mean, people like drinking, so that's always somewhat relatable, right? But what I really learned there was relationship building, like how to talk to anybody, how to engage with anybody. And that's certainly the part of my personality. It's one of my probably special talents. Like I said, I was an average artist. I've never been able to learn a software engineering language. I lean heavily on my data and analytics, like, you know, partners to do that part of the work. But like, you know, crowd control and people and getting in there and making good relationships and figuring out how to work through problems with groups is something that I've really been able to, I think, excel at. It's what I think has gotten me to where I am today. And I don't know if they teach that in a classroom, but I think that it's some part of all of our everyday experience. And so, you know, I would just encourage people to keep an eye out for that. I think it's greatly helpful.
Yeah, Luke, I'll jump into that because I like all your answers. I like that answer because I think that connecting of the dots between what it is you're taking and how you're applying it, I think is critical. And you know, if you can do so in a fun way that relates to what you're good at, what you're strong at, you know, the reality is, and I think where 20 years ago there was a set career path and you were going to work for the same company for 20 years and you were going to get a pension, that's changed. And the, you know, people are going to ebb and flow through their career. I see a lot of people that'll take coursework for the checklist or for the base skill, which is important, but how do you apply that to kind of a softer skill or a broader skill, which I think connects the dots better and it makes you more adaptable. Interestingly enough, I think connecting the dots between what you do and being a bartender is a huge connection. And I think that's, to me, what makes learning, makes college, makes a career more fun, when you can connect it that way.
And then I can give one last, this is not very exciting, but a very practical skill to have is to know how to use Excel. My university required merchandising students to take an Excel class, and it was not fun at all, but I am so grateful because I use it every single day. Our entire agency, doesn't matter what department you're in, you use Excel, even if it's just for organization. But if you look at sales at all, you're probably going to need to know how to use Excel and how to do a VLOOKUP. So if you don't know how to do that, you don't have to take a college class on it, but watch some YouTube videos and you will be very, very happy that you did.
And see, I show my age because in high school, I'm fortunate that I took typing, even though I thought it was kind of a blow-off class, but I guess that's probably waning a little bit. But
I actually was forced to take an Excel class because I transferred to Mason, and they made me take this like 1 credit class at the very, very end of I think I had to take it over the summer, but I was so glad that I did because it taught me all these Excel functions that I didn't know how to use before. Another thing I throw on top of Emma's is PowerPoint. If you can make a PowerPoint deck and make it look professional, like so many people just can't do that. It's crazy.
I think Luke was saying this earlier before we got on, is that, that deck of slides reflect who you are as a person and can convey the story very, very well. And we are in the business of telling a story and convincing people of the story in many a way. Another question related to this, right? So we have some skills. So it almost looks like we're talking about some soft skills or leadership, card management, connecting the dots, and some harder skills of Excel, maybe, and of course the coursework related stuff. And I love that shout out for the marketing analytics course as well, Jenna. And Katie talked about Web 3.0. I'm actually teaching that course now, so I'll shout out for that. Please take that. That's the future. But the question is that the companies is that outside of coursework, what kind of extracurricular activities and certificates are they important in finding you a job? And if so, are there certain things you would recommend students to engage in? And maybe this time I'll start with you, Rich, since you vet a lot of CVs and.
So I'm going to answer it, but I'm going to, I'm going to state that my answer is probably biased with a 30-year career and also with a 17-year-old daughter who is right now considering her college options. So, or life options. It may not include college. I think when we're looking at at whether somebody's qualified, and one of you said something about going into a position as an EA and being in the right place at the right time. Wow, this sounds old, but I think whether it's a certificate or whether it's a relationship or whether it's an experience, everything is a key. And when you hit a door or an opportunity, the more keys you have on that keychain, the more of an opportunity you have to unlock the door. And that sounds really cliche. I didn't get my college degree until a little bit later in life when I figured out what it was I wanted to do and managed to open up some doors. It was just tougher to do so. I think the certifications, and obviously in some professions, in some skill areas, you need them, right? But beyond that, I think they show a willingness to learn, a progression, but I think it's more how you present that as part of the total you, as opposed to not just relying on, I have the certification, therefore I'm entitled to the job.
Yeah, for me, it's like, it's not so much about having the certification, it's that if you were able to get through a certification program and now you that's proof of your interest in whatever you're doing, right? A potential proof of passion for the skill or the role that you're applying for. I usually look for something more than just, acronyms on a resume, but it's like, are these people actually engaging with the community that's out there related to the thing that they're trying to do? Are they, also like getting their PMP and whatever because they really want to be great at project execution? Killer. now tell me what your favorite like subreddit related to project management is, or like who's your favorite person from that school of thought or whatever, right? Like it's a piece of the puzzle to show that like you're not just looking for a job. Like these are things that you actually feel passionately about and can kind of devote yourself to. That's the type of person that you're going to get some really good work out of. Some they're great team members usually as well.
I will go ahead and say my, I guess, journey with the certificate was a little different. I think, languishing after 2 years of work. It's kind of that in between. You're still very entry level, but you feel like you want more in terms of you're finding a career path. And after I took a summer of design program, which is where I learned design thinking, I was really re-energized, and I knew I wanted more. I wanted to focus around innovation, and especially in retail. So I actually applied for an executive education program with Stanford, which was a year long. And it was corporate innovation, because I was working with all of these retailers at the time. And I was working with their innovation officers. And I felt I really wanted to feel confident in what I was talking about and make sure I had the foundation for that. And I will say, for going for certificates, if your work is not paying for it, make sure you are making that investment for yourself and make sure it's something you're passionate about. I paid for mine on my own, and it was kind of very painful for a year, but to me, it built my confidence up so much. I got the experience of a lifetime in working with people from around the globe. And I felt like I kind of got that bite of being back in business school, but with a more creative bend to it. It was really focused on how to grow funding, how to kind of get buy-in within your company, find that power, learn negotiation skills. So for me, it was kind of great. And I feel like it really did pay for itself in the long run. I think it was really beneficial to getting the job I have now. So while it may seem like a long shot and like it may not be worth it at first, I think always betting on yourself. If you know it's something you really want to do and you think it's going to make you feel more confident and you can then talk about that, certifications are a great way to bring into an interview. You have new experiences that maybe you were not getting on the job. So it gives you a lot more to go off of. But that's not to say just any certification is the same. I would say do your research and make sure it's a good fit for what you want for your future.
By the way, if I can just say, that is one of the best answers I have heard to a question in a really long time. And I'm not disparaging the other panelists, but I actually just started taking notes.
Well done. Any other thoughts on the certification or extracurricular activity requirements to get your foot in the door?
I can add on.
All right, go for it.
Okay. At Minnesota, we had the National Retail Federation Student Association for the merchandising program, which is a lot of letters. And not every school has them, but you can connect with that organization even if your school does not have its own chapter. But through that, granted, a lot of it was during COVID and we didn't really get that many in-person events, but that taught us all. We had people from the industry come in, do mock interviews, learn some networking skills, they taught us really what like a job in retail could look like, because when you're in school, you don't really know. You are told these things, but you're like, okay, when you go to work, what do you actually do? And that taught us the value of networking and just getting comfortable with talking to people. And I think that can get you a really long way. It's just being able to hold a conversation, advocate for yourself, and show that willingness to learn.
Excellent. Again, just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box and we can surface them as it arises. But now moving on to the more philosophical questions, if you will, which is, what is the advice that you would give to the students today, right? Like, or what would you give the advice to your, I know, Emma, you're just out of college, but what would you give to your college self, right? What, be it technical skills, be it soft skills, be it some career advice, what's the advice you have for students when they are in college?
I would say start networking early, make as many connections as you can, reach out to people, and don't be afraid to reach out to people. Most people are willing to have a conversation with you just about the industry in general. And that gets your name out there, that gets you learning, other people learning about what talent is coming into the workforce. but definitely just have coffee chats with people, even your own professors. If you're not already doing that, they're there. They want to do that with you. And so do so many people in the companies that you're probably going to apply for. And then part two is you will probably have to apply for a lot of jobs, and don't get discouraged. It's tough out there, but just keep trying. Don't give up.
Yeah. And I love the shout out to reach your professors and talk to them and have coffee. As Jenna knows, I'm a big coffee person. So, and I offer any coffee time at 3 o'clock. We'll go to Starbucks. We can discuss career opportunities.
He is an incredible resource. When I was making the transition from my advertising company to Petco, he was so instrumental in revamping my resume. The first one I sent him, he was like, "Can I be candid for a minute? What the heck?" I was like, "I don't know." He's like, "This is like a student resume. You're beyond this at this point." So he really gave me that that lens of having been in the industry and kind of knowing what they're looking for. To jump on what Katie said, like really work on those skills that are useful to where you want to go with it, because a lot of these companies are pulling resumes through their SEO keyword search. So they're looking for like data analysis, or they're looking for Tableau or something like that. But if you don't want to be one of those people, then don't focus on that, you know? I would also say, yes, reach out to people and also be really, really positive. You know, you might not even realize that you might not be coming off positive, but punch it up. Let these interviewers know that you're really happy to see them. You're happy to talk to them. Like Luke said, you're passionate about it. And it might be hard, you know, when I was living in DC, everything was a government contractor. And I was like, what does this company do? And they gave me some convoluted answer that didn't make any sense. But it's possible to find things that you care about. At that advertising company, my first client was Miller Coors. So I was doing all of the beer advertising for all of their brands. And so it's possible to find something that you're really excited about going into the interview for. And just really bring that passion and let them know how much you want it, because they want the person who wants it the most.
Yeah, I would say just start building your voice and finding a perspective. So reading some of the news articles of whatever company that you're interviewing for, and finding kind of what experiences relate back to that. I would even say, if you're interested enough, post blogs on your LinkedIn and kind of get your name out there associated as an author to a point of view. Because I think a lot of people wait a little later in their careers to start finding the courage to post their own blogs. But I think to the extent that you can start that early, it shows that you know what you're talking about and they hired you for a reason. And then even once you get hired, a lot of people are really scared to speak up in meetings. I think if you know your idea has kind of legs to walk on, feel free to share it. I've always shared my opinions, and I think bosses really appreciate that. They want to know you're engaged. They want to know you're listening and kind of you're in the meeting for a reason. Maybe you're the person who takes notes, but if you have a relevant answer, make sure you share that and really have the group think about it, because the best ideas come from diverse groups, and your early perspective is going to help change ideas as well.
From my perspective, I'd say career paths are very long. And so you don't always have to hit like the exact title that you're looking for in order to get into an organization or into an area that you want to be working in. And so there's a lot of opportunity out there to get creative with it. Katie, I love the idea about the blog part of it. Like anything you can do to be proactive is so helpful to show interest and like engagement and that kind of stuff. And it'll really pique the interest of whoever you're interviewing with too. So that's, you know, if I reflect 10 years ago, I actually asked my best friend, who was a headhunter at the time, if I should potentially take the job to manage the restaurant that I was working at instead of the sales role at Custom Ink. And no shots at, you know, service industry workers or restaurant managers, but like I'd still be doing that instead of here where I am working in technology and feeling really satisfied, like I got into what I wanted to do. And I did not want to be in a sales role for a long time, but I knew that Custom Ink as a technology company was in the spaces in the area that I wanted to work in, and getting in the door, I had lots of different avenues to choose from them, you know, further down the road.
Rich, any thoughts?
I think all great answers, and somebody mentioned LinkedIn. Yeah, keep your the tactical thing is that make sure you are putting yourself out there. I would give probably a couple of softer answers, and it aligns with what everybody here is saying. One is whatever you do it with intent. Even if it's taking the restaurant job or it's moving to Paris and sleeping on someone's couch and exploring the cafes, the worst thing you can do is decide to do something like that and then a year later wonder what you got out of it. So if you're going to do something, regardless of what it is, do it with intent, and then aligned with your career path. 90% of you are not going to wind up where you think you're going to wind up today, if in fact you think you're going to wind up somewhere. So I'll borrow this from Ted Lasso. Always be curious. And the dart scene is probably one of the best scenes in television over the last few years. But I think if you can approach everything with that curiosity and not that immediate biased reaction that folks have sometimes with, well, that's not what I intended or that's not my path. I think you'll open a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities by embracing that curiosity.
Questions. We had a couple of questions in the chat. One is maybe Rich, you might be the most suited to answer this, which is how do you make the transition from the work floor to a more corporate setting?
You sell your soul. No, you don't. It's interesting. It's a very good question, because when I was in smaller retail, I wondered, I had that I want to go to New York and be part of a bigger retail organization. Then when I was in specialty retail, I wanted to go to the department store. Then when I was in a department store, I thought, what about wholesale? And now I'm in government. And part of it is fueled by my own level of imposter syndrome, but I think don't overthink it. I think a lot of people get a little bit hyped with well, this is a startup and this is corporate, and yes, there's differences, but if you are true to yourself and true to your values and you look for those corporate opportunities where someone's more aligned with who you are and what you think, it's not as much of a jump or a leap as I once thought it was.
I think also to that question, when I was at Sherwin-Williams, I know they had a really in-depth intranet. And if you went on there kind of while you were working on the store floor, they had a lot of jobs listed. And if you already work for the company, you're usually on a shorter list to have your application reviewed. So make sure you're constantly checking kind of updates on what jobs are offered. I know at Estee Lauder, they also have their own website for employees where you can go and apply to jobs. So I would say make sure you have a good cover letter, making connections, like I think everyone has mentioned here, but always be checking those job openings and actually apply to them. I think that's the main thing, is getting over the hurdle and making sure you're actually putting yourself out there again.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on this? Because there's another question.
This was something I was really concerned about because like I said, I worked at a Wegmans. I worked in a grocery store for like 7 years. So I was like, I didn't even know how to work in an office. So something that really helped was Mason has that job finding site. And I used that so much. I think I found like 4 or 5 internships off of that. And none of them were really what I wanted to do. But I learned a lot about just like being in an office politics and things like that. And then when I went to apply for my first job, they were like, oh my God, you have all this experience. And they were very impressed. So the thing was that I always had 2 or 3 jobs when I was in school. So I had like the job at the grocery store that actually paid the most and was like paying for my gas to and from Mason. But I actually took a pay cut to take those internships a little bit. And I would say if you're in a position where that's your choice right now, like Rich said, make an intentional choice, because, Wegmans was also offering internships and I could have worked there forever if I, hadn't made a choice to branch out and do something else.
Excellent. All right. In the interest of time, let's move on. There's another question, which was, what are the trends coming down the pike for the industry from a technology standpoint? And I guess, Katie, you might want to kick this off, Luke.
Yeah, as I mentioned right now, kind of metaverse is what we're hearing in every, I think, news article that you click on. So Web3 is going to be really big, and we have our eye on crypto a lot just to see kind of where that's going, because it fluctuates a lot and kind of it's always changing. But for me, kind of user experience on websites is where I focus most. So how can we engage the audience on an e-com site? So with Metaverse right now, that doesn't really connect to a website. So while that's really cool, that may not be right for our company right now or our brands. So it's kind of finding those technologies right now. With makeup, it's a lot of the virtual try-on, which I'm sure some of you have used at one point or another with your smartphone, and kind of essentially putting filters on your face and being able to buy it right there. So I would say kind of those are the biggest trends that are with us right now, is kind of virtual and then Web3.
For us, I'd say the most recent technology advances that we take advantage of are more around machine learning. We use a lot of that. And Custom Ink's interesting because it's half e-commerce, where all those orders are coming in, but we have a huge production side of the organization as well. And so there's a lot of places for efficiency using machine learning to understand how orders should route. Should we look at them? Should we not? A number of different things. And then of course upstream in the customer experience, whether we'd be like personalizing their experience when they land on the site, or making product recommendations, a number of other things. We've also got internally kind of some hackathons that we do. And so we dabble in all kinds of wild stuff. When you set a team of 100 software engineers loose and say do whatever you want for 3 or 4 days. Most recently, they came back with NFTs, like NFTs like t-shirts, get it? And it was, it's the first dabbling in that Web3 stuff. And it right now, it seems like still a long, reach to put that in front of customers, but you can start to see how a lot of that stuff begins to kind of cross each other's paths. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on trends to watch out for in this industry?
The other trend, just more broadly in retail, that I've seen a lot is sustainability and ESG, and how that connects back to the business. So sustainability is kind of seeping into every part. It's no longer kind of just its own pillar within the business, but it really kind of goes into the value of the company. And we see it a lot connecting with supply chain. So technologies there are also really hot. Tons of startups in supply chain for retail. I think that's probably one of the biggest outside of e-commerce. But so if you're interested in supply chain technologies, sustainability, and things like that, I think there's definitely a place for you in retail, and something to consider.
Sustainability is huge. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say sustainability is huge. I was going to say also fitting health and wellness into people's everyday lifestyle in a way that's not disruptive. So you could see that our company, Petco, rebranded as Petco, the health and wellness company, sometime last year. So we're a lot more interested in services, like pet insurance, vet care type thing, having full service vets in more stores, things like that. Really, anything that helps boost someone's idea of how well they're taking care of themselves is going to be a big trend.
Rich?
Yeah, I think, beyond, I agree with all of it, and beyond the technology, I'd say there's 2 kind of macro trends that I would watch for. One, obviously a lot of talk about inflation and world events, what's going on. I don't think this is just about inflation. I think it's more of a tectonic, it's a shift. You're not going to find cheaper countries to manufacture in. The value of an employee has gone up to where you can no longer afford to pay low wages. You're seeing more regionalized sourcing and less. So you're seeing this entire shift that's happening. At the same time, from both an associate and a consumer perspective, what you're seeing is that workers and customers have a lot more power, and they have a lot more say into what you're doing. So where sustainability may have been talked about before, health and wellness may have been talked about before, both associates and consumers are demanding it. And retailers and brands have to adapt, or, forgive me, but they have to adapt or die. And so I think that the power that rests in your hands as incoming associates and in customers to determine what they're going to do, it's a very interesting time to be in this industry.
Emma, do you have any additional thoughts?
I can
You know,
add
one
in.
other thing.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. I can go. I was going to add in something we're always looking at is what's going on in social commerce. It's very difficult to track what's happening in social commerce if you're not the brand yourself and you have access to, let's say, your Instagram account and can take data from that. But we're always looking, we'll see these massive trend or massive spikes in sales some random days. We can't trace it back to anything really. And we'll find that something blew up on TikTok and it went viral and that's what happened. But then that fad dies. And how do you build all of this? How do you sustain the success of something going viral? And how do you predict when it's going to happen in the future are things that my company is always looking to try and figure out and provide that to our clients.
Very nice. Luke, you were about to say something?
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to contribute was that, you know, a view of who your customers are. For a long time, you know, you'll hear B2B and B2C come up a lot, business to consumer, business to business. And at least at Custom Ink ourselves, we see a large number of our customers actually being organizations now. We used to talk a lot about being the company for groups and occasions, and now we talk about being the company for groups and communities. And seeing those communities is not just like your own local, you know, church group, you know, who's on your block, whatever else, but also communities inside the workplace and those size teams. So I don't know if that prevails across other, you know, areas of e-commerce and whatnot, but it's worth keeping in mind when you're thinking about who you're serving and who your product is serving.
Okay. All right, so we are 5 minutes or 8 minutes left. Quickly go to the career opportunities that's available. You know, be it internships, if there are any to share with this with the audience, that'll be helpful.
I'm looking for interns, and
Okay.
they could lead to full-time opportunities. And I will shamelessly plug that coming to work for an organization such as ours, you have the opportunity to be exposed to a variety of product categories, business types, global retailing. And so for an internship, it's something that we are quite proud of. Gotham, however, I can, you have my email address. Someone can respond to me and I can connect them. I think we have 4 more openings.
Yeah, if anyone who's interested in the audience or who listens to the video recording, reach out to me and I'll connect you with Rich or anyone in the panel if you're looking for interns.
And we have them in I think merchandising, marketing, and in analytics.
Perfect. And Kerry Willigan, who's a career services, can help on that issue as well. Any other companies or members of the panel who are looking for interns and or full-time positions?
I don't know about interns, but Custom Ink is hiring a crazy amount. We plan to grow a ton in the next couple of years, and so there's going to be a lot of roles opening up constantly. The careers page at customink.com is pretty easy to navigate. I'd suggest taking a look at it, taking a shot at something if you're interested. If you're interested in product management, just generally as a job, I can share some resources with you, Gotham, afterwards that could be circled around. If anybody be interested in that stuff, I keep an ear and an eye on over time to get a sense of how the profession is kind of growing and evolving.
That'll be wonderful.
Yeah, I would say Estee Ollies is looking for interns. They have a very competitive internship program. They are based in New York. I work remote in DC, but I think most of the jobs are based in the Flatiron district there. I believe they're also hiring for kind of all levels. It's a global company, so it's massive to say the least. But I would also say remain open to kind of recruiters in that kind of world. Estee does a lot of contract hires as well, where essentially you would work on a year-long contract that generally gets renewed. But that sounds really risky, I know, to some people, but it's actually can be a very good opportunity. And so just be open to different opportunities like that, because you will still be fully integrated into a team. You may not be kind of within their payroll, but it's a good way to get into some bigger companies as well.
Excellent. Emma,
I can go. For Flywheel Digital, we are always hiring entry level. My job, which is a retail specialist, and then we also have media specialists. And you can think about it, I do sales analysis mostly, and then media side is going to be digital advertising. We are always hiring for these positions. As I mentioned in the beginning, our main office is in Baltimore. We're also in Seattle, and you can work remote from anywhere in the world if you really want to. But reach out to me if you're interested. You can find Flywheel Digital on LinkedIn, and that's usually very updated with our job postings if you're about to graduate and you're looking for a job.
Excellent.
I know that we're currently hiring a lot. I personally have been begging for an intern on the insights team for the past 2 years. They keep pretending I'm on mute when I ask for it. We just got an intern for like a month. It was a temporary thing through something called the AdFellows program, AdFellows. She wasn't working directly with me, but she was working with people on my team. So potentially look at that because it sounded like a really cool program. Like she spent 4 weeks with us. She spent 4 weeks at like Facebook and a couple other companies. So they kind of had her rotating out. We are always hiring. Unfortunately, our CEO believes in in-person work, so it probably will not be a remote opportunity. You will have to move to sunny San Diego, where it is very expensive to live right now. So I'm happy to help with any advice or like if you want to do like mock interviews or something, but I don't specifically know about any job opportunities.
Perfect. Well, do you have any, if you have any last thoughts, the floor is yours. You got 3 minutes or 4 minutes, just wrapping thoughts for the future retailers in the session.
I think my last thought would be to get familiar with being on camera, especially if you will be doing virtual interviews. It can be alarming kind of the first couple of times, and I know a lot of people do not like having their cameras on. So I would say get comfortable doing that so you're not distracted by your own image, by things kind of happening in background. But that is one thing that's huge now in learning how to do volume properly and things like that. So it's not something that I did when I first graduated, but in the last 2-3 years, it's been huge. So get familiar.
That's excellent. That's a great advice. I've noticed the lighting here itself. I'm intentionally trying to cover my face. Any other thoughts?
You can
Something-
also oh, sorry.
Go for it.
Following on Katie's answer is just learn how to reflect your personality in a virtual interview as well. I use my hands when I talk all the time and I make sure to actually throw them in the screen as well. But some people don't do that. And it's just, it stands out so much to the people you talk to in recruiting when you can really show who you are through the camera. And that's not a natural skill for most people. So even if you have to sit and look at yourself on record and just talk to yourself, just practice it. It will go so far.
Fantastic. Great.
Something that I always do, this is just a personal tip that I do. I think it works well. You don't have to do this, but whenever I have an interview, typically beforehand, they'll tell you who you're interviewing with. And I go and I look at all of their LinkedIn pages. So it's kind of like when they say in poker, you don't play your cards, you play your opponent. So I figure out where people are from. Are they Southern? Are they from the East Coast? Are they from the Midwest? Like, where did they go to college? And you can really kind of code switch and play to each person what they're looking for if you really learn who you're talking to.
Excellent. Look, Rich, do you have any thoughts?
I don't know that I can top that. You know what, the comment about being comfortable on video as we've transitioned to more virtual, I hear I'd rather, turn the video off, but it's the same as being in the office. So you've got to kind of get used to it. I love the idea of trying to do a little bit of research, a little bit of research and perspective on the company and the individuals that you're interviewing with will go a long way. If for no other reason than as people get further on in their careers, they become more vain. I mean, you're laughing, but it's true.
I do actually. I will give you that. Luke, do you have any final thoughts, concluding thoughts?
Yeah, I just think that it's important to be passionate about whatever you're doing, whether that's applying for a job, going to an interview, any of those things. Everything that everybody said here is spot on. And I haven't applied for a job in a while. I've been at Custom Ink for a long time, but I can say that whenever I used to do it, like you already don't have the job, right? So what's the worst that can happen going into it? And so I'd say take risks. Reach for whatever you want to get to and learn from each one of those experiences. If it doesn't go well, see if there's something that you can get out of it to help prepare you for the next opportunity you might go after.
Awesome. Thank you. On that awesome note, we'll probably call it an end. Thank you again for making time to share with the audience, both in person and the virtual consumption, for what skills you're looking for. Is it okay if they reach out to you to connect with you on LinkedIn if they need any advice? Okay, I see yeses. And if anyone's looking for internships, we can connect you. Carrie or I can connect you with the panelist as well. Thank you. Have a great evening. I appreciate your time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Hey, thanks all.